Hello, this video is to introduce my Dungeon Crawl solo book. So the book introduces a set of rules to allow DCC to be run solo, and I assume you're going to start with a whole party of zero level characters. Go through a funnel and then level up from there. So what the book contains is the first bit is the basic yes/no oracle, which is the core of all solo role playing. And this uses D20 and a set of DC numbers. So the lower the DC, the more likely you are to get a yes by rolling over it. So here, so what the book says, it says DC 5 if it's likely to be yes, DC 10 for if you really don't know, it's a 50-50. DC 15 for an unlikely. You have to roll high to get the over the 15. A 1 is always a no. A 20 is always a yes. So that's your criticals, and these would be the more extreme, the equivalent of the kind of yes and or a no and result. So here's a d20. Let's roll the d20. A 9. So if the question was 50-50, then that would have been a no. If I'd rolled higher, then it would have been a yes. So then there's a little bit about interpreting the answers, the fumbles and criticals for your the 1 and yes. So the 1 and 20 critical yes and no. And there's a little bit here about MPC reactions. And what they're used for is when you're controlling a whole party of zero level characters, or when you've leveled up and you've got a group of characters that are sort of under your control, rather than trying to be everyone, what I suggest is you play the character, either your favorite character or you play the character in the spotlight, and everybody else is controlled through yes no questions. So if you're playing a fighter and you want to know, does the thief check for traps, do they do they do all the kind of stuff that you'd expect them to do. You would expect them to sort of do their best, so it'd be likely that they do. So you just roll a d20. And what this does is it pushes all of the other characters slightly outside of your control. Now, if you've got a really bad relationship with the party thief and you've asked them to go and check for traps, they may say, "Sod it, you can open it yourself." So there is the DCC will not always, sorry, the DC number will not always be a likely. It might be less because if you've got a bad relationship. So you're using the D20 there to control NPCs. Now, the next bit we've got here is event dice. Now, I suggest using a couple of different methods here. One is the clock, where you decide how many failures an event might take before it triggers it. So rather than having to roll kind of for awareness of guards and things, you can just sort of say, right, okay, if I do 3 things which the guards are likely to spot, then one of them will have picked up on it. And that could be forcing a lock where the patrolling guard might see the broken lock, or actually taking out a guard and stashing the body. Someone may notice that the guard hasn't come back. It could be making falling down a pit and making a horrible clattering noise. Any of these things might be enough to tick the clock down, and a really elite guard unit might have a very small clock, so only 1 or 2 things is enough to alert them. Some slovenly drunken guards might have a huge clock where you have to really, really do your raid badly before you alert them. So you can kind of make a subjective call on how big the clock is, and then what triggers it. An alternative to that is event dice or drama dice, where you create a pool of dice and you say, okay, elite guards, give them 2d6, slovenly guards, you give them 6d6. Every time you do something where you might trigger the guards, you force the lock, you've fallen down the pit, you've done whatever, you roll the pool and you discard any sixes. When the pool is empty, when you've discarded the last six, that's when uh, the guards are alerted or the event happens or whatever. The difference between the two is, with a clock, you will know when you're down on your last life. If you lose a life every time you do something noisy, or um, you, whatever your situation is, you will know when you're down to your last chance. And so it puts some drama into the solo game, but you do know when you are you at that last chance. With drama dice, you could literally force the lock and go to step inside, roll 6d6, and they all come up six, and that's it. In your game, chances are a guard either saw or heard you break that lock, and that's it. You've lost the stealth right from the get go. On the other hand, you could be down to your last d6 for half a game session, rolling that one, and it just refuses to roll a six for you, and you get away with amazing amount. So you never know when it's going to uh, um, you know when that's going to trigger. So that's event dice and drama dice and the pool approach. The next thing is, I'll talk a little bit about Mighty Deeds and using the magic and really leaning into what Dungeon Crawl Classics does best. Um, so the next bit is open questions. Now, um, the whole reason this book got written was because someone asked me for it. They had used my solo adventures for Stars Without Number, and that used the game icon based Oracle. And they then bought my OSR rules, which doesn't use that. That's all D6 driven. And they were disappointed. They thought that all my books were going to use this icon of Oracle. And so they asked for their OSR game of choice was Dungeon Crawl Classics. So they asked for an icon driven Dungeon Crawl Classic rulebook, and that's what this is. So I do have an icon-driven oracle in here. Now what you do is you roll d16s, and if I go on a couple of pages, I'm just going to skip forward. You see these big blocks here. If you see that, imagine them as a 4x4 block and the two blocks on the page. So what you would do is you'd roll the d16, which is the little bronzy one here. So I'll take that as a 16, and the next roll I'll take. Oh, I don't want that. I want a 2, 16 and a 2. So the 16 is the dagger, and the now I'm not sure what is that. Looks like fruit on a tree. So you've got these two icons, and let's get back here. So on that roll, it would have been a dagger and a fruit on a tree. And you kind of think, well, what do they mean? So you start off with a question, and uh, so the sample questions I've used here are fairly standard. I've got what's in the box. Okay, so your character's opened the box and you roll the two icons, and you get a branch of a fruit tree and a dagger. So you could say, well, it's a fruit knife. Yeah, there you go. Simple as that. It's just a fruit knife. Maybe a presentation fruit knife in a box. You've answered the question. Now it could be that in a different context, that branch, it could mean something completely utterly different. So that's basically what you do. You roll for pairs of icons, put them together, and then use them as a bit of a word association type thing. The other option is a words-driven oracle, because not everyone likes the pictures. And after I wrote this, someone actually commented that because I used the black background, white icons and a black background, it's very ink heavy. So I'll have a think about that for future books. But the word oracle, what you do here is you're going to roll for a random page in a book. So now I've got here, this is the DCC Lankmar Judge's Guide to Newen, I think that's pronounced. And it's 109 pages, but by the time you skipped a few off the front and the index off the back and whatnot, you're talking about 100 pages. So what you would do is, if I had 5 books in front of me, I could have the core rules, I could have some I've got the Lankmar box set, a few books from there, and the adventure I'm working on. I could roll, if I've got 4 books, roll d4 to choose which book. Um, if the book was say 300 pages, what I would do is I would roll a say d4 -1. If I got a 0, that would be page 1 to 100. If I rolled a 1, that'd be 101 to 199, and so on through the book. So you're picking a random page, and I'll roll the D100 now, which are the blue ones here, and I've come up with page 26. So I go to page 26, and page 26 has um, 26 here happens to be a wizard spell. Now I'm going to roll a d6, and that's going to tell me which paragraph to choose, and the d4 for which sentence. So I've got 2 and 2. So the second paragraph happens to be this manifestations one, and the second sentence or part is whispering grey fog. So we've got whispering grey fog at the moment, and now we repeat the process, and I get page 5 and paragraph 5, sentence 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sentence 2. I take sentence parts as well. So cold, Winsep, grassland, homes. So we had grey fog and cold, Winsep, grasslands. So answering the box, what's answering the question, what's in the box? We pick out keywords. So I'm going to take the colour from the first one, the grey fog. So I've got grey. I'm going to take the grass from the second sentence, and so the box contains some dried grey grass snippets or cuttings. Now, so I've got a completely different answer now to what was in the box. The nice thing about using the dice and page method is that if you're using the setting book, you're going to get words that and sentences and pick out keywords that really relate to the setting you're in. So it will anchor your solo game in the game world. If there's a famous wizard in the source books, there's a chance you may find references to that wizard in the in your answers. Same for the locations, place names. It all ties it into into the world you're playing in. And this is a kind of a hint of what I was doing with the cut ups coming now into regular play without it being cut up play. So when you got the icons method here and the words method here, that's what that relates to. And there's examples. And now, when I talk about creating the campaign and creating adventures, really this is just a reskinned version of the five room dungeon by John Ford. And I explain how all that works. Then you've got your bank of icons here. There's 256 icons, and then some special collections. If your solo play suggests there's going to be a trap, then there you go. You've got a D20 list of traps there, and a D24 suggestions for monsters. And then I've got some advice on creating adventures and playing published adventures. and that really makes up the end section of the book. Now there will be an actual play video. For my patron, I've been doing a series of videos on this book with. We've been playing through Portal Under the Stars, which is the free adventure in the DCC core book and the quick start. So there's a few different methods that you can apply to publish adventures and creating your own adventure. And then this last bit is the sandbox, which is your own adventure. And you see I'm using icons here, but I do talk about using the words method as well. And that's it. There's the back cover. This is the Dungeon Crawl solo, and that should be published on the 10th of May. Okay, thank you very much.